Hey everyone, Demonite here, and here it finally is. Here's my Soldier Axton build video for you guys. Now the reason why this took me so long is because I wanted to make sure that everything on this build is perfect before I released it. So I've done a lot of testings, a lot of calculations, and had to decide between a lot of things, but now I'm finally satisfied with how it turned out. So yeah, I'm making this video for you guys. So this build is mainly a gun-based build, so it's focused around using guns with Axton obviously, and it's also focused around DPS a bit. But this build is not Axton's highest gun DPS build, that would be a Killskill build, but therefore it's also focused around survivability and your turret a bit. So overall it's a build which is pretty much usable in any situation, but it also is a mobbing build, so generally you don't want to kill raids with it, but you can still easily kill some of the easier raids like Pyropede, Chromarex or Dexidius with it. So now let's talk about the spec of this build. So as I said, I've done a lot of testings and there are some things you can change about this build if you want to, but I'm gonna talk about that when I get to those skills. And this is just generally the spec I use for my Soldier Axton build. Alright, so in the Gorilla tree we have Sentry, and this is just overall a great skill because it'll practically increase your chance of slagging enemies with your turret because of the extra burst shots, and the turret duration is also always nice to have. Then we have Ready, which is pretty much a no-brainer, just more reload speed, which is a direct boost to your DPS. Then we have Willing, which is gonna improve your shields overall, so that's a great skill to have. And then we have Onslaught, which is also another great boost to your DPS, and the movement speed is also extremely helpful because it'll either help you to keep your kill skills active, since you will be able to move to enemies quickly, or it'll help you to escape from some situations without going down. Then Scorched Earth, this isn't necessarily needed, but it's just one skill point and it'll either negate the health regeneration of some enemies, or it can kill some smaller enemies, so yeah, definitely something you can pick up. And now Grenadier, those 4 points here can pretty much be put into any of those 4 skills right here. Grenadier is obviously gonna give you more grenades, but you can also put them into Able for some more healing. Or you can, for example, put 2 points into Grenadier and 2 points into Laser Sight to make your turret a bit more accurate. Or just put 1 point into Laser Sight just so you see where your turret is currently shooting at. And you can even put them into Crisis Management. I would say out of those 4 skills, Crisis Management is the worst one because you will have a lot of shield buffs, like Willing, but it still helps in Fight for Your Life, so if you want to, you can pick this up. And then we have Double Up, which just slag on your turret, pretty much the best turret skill Axton has. Okay, so moving on to the gunpowder tree, we have Impact, which is pretty straightforward, just more gun damage. So that's always nice to pick up. Then we have Expertise. Now this skill is really great in my opinion because the weapon swap speed does indirectly boost your DPS because you will be able to swap to your slag weapon faster and back again. So that's a nice skill and it's 8 out of 5, but I'll get to that when I talk about the survival tree here. Then we have Metal Storm, which is a massive boost to your DPS. That fire rate can just get insane, and the recoil reduction is also nice to have. Then we have Steady, which is recoil reduction, grenade damage, and rocket launcher damage. Now, if you're absolutely not going to use any weapons with splash damage and aren't going to use your grenades in order to deal damage, then you can theoretically leave this out and spec into Overload if you're going to use assault rifles, or duty calls if you're going to use non-elemental weapons, which there are only 2 on this build, but I would still recommend Steady just because of the recoil reduction, and also if you're going to use a rocket launcher because of the damage. Then we have Longbow Turret. Now this is going to make your turret a lot more tankier, and the deploy range is also pretty nice because you will be able to deploy your turret anywhere you want. And then we have Battlefront, which is just more DPS for both guns and grenades, so that's nice to pick up. And then we have Do or Die, which is more grenade damage and more rocket launcher damage, but also enables you to throw grenades during fight for your life. Which is just brilliant because you can either pull enemies closer to you in fight for your life with a singularity grenade, or you can kill them with a fastball or something like that, or you can slag them with a slag grenade. So it does really help. Alright, and finally we have the survival tree. Now the reason why I didn't spec into healthy right here is because I am using Moxie weapons and transfusion grenades on this build, so putting points into healthy would actually increase the chance of me getting downed instead of helping me. But if you're absolutely not going to use those, you can put 1 point into here, take 1 point from preparation and put it in here, but more than 1 point is still wasted in my opinion. Then we have preparation, which is mainly just for the health regeneration because the shield capacity is bugged, as some of you may know. But it is a tier 1 skill and it also is boosted by the class mod, so 10 out of 5 is the way to go here. Then we have pressure, which is a pretty brilliant skill because if your health is low, you want your shield to get back up again as fast as possible, so the recharge delay does really help you. And the reload speed is also pretty significant, and it will massively boost your DPS in fight for your life. And then we have quick charge, which is another brilliant skill, because this just boosts your shield regeneration rate by a lot if your shield capacity is high enough. And it can actually outdo damage over times on you, again, if your shield capacity is high enough. And it also works really great with the sham shield because you will always be able to absorb ammo. And then we have Maglock, which will enable you to throw your turret against walls or ceilings, which will make it easier for your turret to slag enemies and stay alive, so this is more of a tactical skill. But if you want to, you can trade this in for Nuke, which will enable you to push enemies away from you and stun them for a little bit, and it'll also deal some extra damage. And personally, I like them both equally, but I think more people like Maglock, so that's the reason why I spent this point into Maglock. And then here we have Resourceful, which would give you more cooldown rate. And this was the skill where I originally put the extra 2 points from Expertise in. So I would go 6 out of 5 in Expertise and 2 out of 5 in Resourceful. But I've actually calculated how much that would be, and um, this plus 10% cooldown rate would just mean 2 less seconds of cooldown, and if you're using a Bone of the Ancients relic, it's only 1 second, which I think isn't really worth it, so I've put the 2 points into expertise here. If you'd want to, you could put the points in some skills over here, for example, max your 4 to 5 skill out and maybe put 1 point into laser sight, or go with 2 skills here, each with 3 points in them, but I chose expertise because I prefer it over any of those skills. Alright, and now let's move on to the items on this build. So this is kind of the part where I really went crazy because I wasn't sure which items I should include and which I shouldn't. But I figured it's probably better to have too many items instead of too few, because you can just throw away those which you aren't going to use, and this just makes for a larger variety of things you can do with this build. So let's start with the weapons. The Uncam turret here, pretty much the main weapon I use on this build because it's just a total beast and pretty much the best pistol in the game for Axton. Then the Grog Nozzle for obvious reasons, just for healing and maybe for slag. The Carnage, a pretty nice shotgun, works really great on this build. The Slagger, just for slagging of course, and this does have a melee 1 grip for an increased chance to slag enemies. And yeah, the magazine size and the reload speed will suffer a bit from this, but the magazine size is still high enough and you won't usually reload this weapon too often anyway. Then we have some interfaces here. By the way, if the weapon can come in all 3 elements, it will be here with all 3 elements on this build. But yeah, the interfacer, pretty much the strongest shotgun in the game, so it's pretty obvious why it's on this build. It works really great with this build. Then the Omen, pretty much the second strongest shotgun in the game, at least for Axton I would say. And all of these come with a Tedior grip, and I tested both the Bandit and Jacob's grip on this weapon as well, and DPS wise they're really not that great, so you definitely want a Tedior grip with this weapon. Then the Becca, just one of the strongest assault rifles in this game, and yeah, all of these assault rifles on this build would work better with a rifleman class mod, but that doesn't mean they will perform bad on a soldier class mod, so I still put them on here. Then here we have some bada booms. It's basically not a Norfleet and still a very powerful rocket launcher, and I think it's preferred by a lot of people. And also all of these rocket launchers will have a Mali one side and the rest will be all torque parts. That just makes for the highest damage per shot. Then the Norfleet, just the strongest rocket launcher in the game, and it's also a great second wind weapon, so it's on here. The Ogre, pretty much just a brilliant assault rifle, and in my opinion it's the best assault rifle on Axton, but that is arguable. Then the Kerr Blaster, another great assault rifle for Axton. The Flagger, if you've seen my video about Axton synergy with non-crit based weapons, you'll know that this weapon can be pretty devastating on Axton. Then some Baby Makers, they obviously were really great on Axton with his grenade damage boosts. And they're also great for second wins or killing badasses or something like that. And here's also a non-elemental version, so you have explosive Baby Makers to throw at enemies. Then the Conference Core, this is mainly just for the shock version is mainly just for Chromarex, and a corrosive version if you want to take down flying enemies like buzzards or surveyors. But I still put on a fire version here just so you have all three of them, and even though Axton doesn't have the greatest synergy with it, the Conference Core is still a very powerful weapon and you can definitely kill things with it. Then the Hornet, this works surprisingly well on Axton actually. It does have splash damage and it's just really powerful. Then here we have the Slow Hand, which I'm personally not the biggest fan of, because it doesn't have grenade splash damage, but it's one of those weapons which can score critical hits, so it does have some synergy with Axton and you can definitely kill things with it. And of course it's also a Moxie weapon, so it's nice to heal yourself with. And then there's also a slag version here, because this is a pretty nice slag weapon. It has a pretty high chance at 72% times 3. But what kind of bothers me with this is that you can slag yourself with this, and I'm not really a fan of that, but of course it's also again nice to heal yourself with, so you can actually trade this in for both the Grog Nozzle and the Slagger and equip another weapon to deal with damage with, for example a rocket launcher. And this one also has a Bandit grip instead of a Hyperion grip, because you don't want to go for DPS with this, you just want to slag things with it. So a Bandit grip is better on this one. And then here we have some Hyperion Plasma Casters. Now I've actually put them on the build after recording everything else, so don't be surprised if you don't see them again in a second here. But the Plasma Casters, some pretty nice SMGs, and they have 50% grenade splash damage, so that's nice. They don't deal amazing amounts of damage, but they definitely do work. Then we have the Sword Explosion, which is just a brilliant weapon for Axton and really powerful, and it's one of those weapons which I also use pretty frequently along with the Ravager. And I think after the patch this only has 60% splash damage instead of 100%, so it got nerfed quite a bit, but it's only the secondary projectile, so it's not too big of a deal and it's still really powerful. Then we have the Ravager, as I said, another one of those weapons which I use pretty frequently, and this is just a total beast of a weapon. Then some Lady Fists here, obviously a really powerful pistol, and Axton can make great use out of that, plus 800% critical hit damage. And despite its ugly look, I've put Tedious sights on these because I think the Tedious sight actually provides a pretty nice level of zoom. Then we have the Pimpernel, obviously another really powerful weapon, and Axton can use this just like a shotgun, so you don't have to aim precisely with it. Then the Sandhawk, mainly just for bee hawking, but even without a bee, it's a pretty decent weapon. Then we have the Hail, which is another contender for Axton's best assault rifle, because this assault rifle is just brilliant. It has an unlisted projectile, it has grenade splash damage, it has a crit multiplier, and it can also heal you, so just a brilliant weapon. Then we have a Creamer, which I'm personally not using too often, but this is a really powerful rocket launcher and a lot of people seem to like it on Axton. Um, on this one I've switched the Maliwan side to a Tedious side because you don't want rocket speed with this one to hit the sweet spot. Then we have a Twister, and this weapon got nerfed quite massively by the patch, but it's still really powerful on Axton, so it's definitely on here. By the way, there's also a Slag Pimpernel on here, obviously, because it's one of the best Slag weapons in the game, and this one also has the fire rate prefix instead of the damage prefix. And finally we have the Blockhead, and the Blockhead is actually pretty special because it always had plus 100% splash damage, so it didn't get nerfed by the patch in any way and still has its 100% splash, which makes it a lot more comparable to the Omen now. And I've tested both the Jacobs and the Bandit grips on this weapon, and the Bandit grip still didn't perform that great, but the Jacobs grip actually increased its damage by 12.7% because this weapon can come with a gentle prefix, and that's actually pretty significant. But the Tedio grip still outperforms it in terms of DPS, unless you have some sort of magazine size boost like a Tedio relic, and that's why I put a Jacob's grip blockhead together with a Tedio relic in the save, so if you want to, you can use that. So now let's get to the relics on this build. So here we have an explosive elemental relic, as well as all kinds of Bone of the Ancients, and those are multiplicative boosts, so they'll boost your damage by a lot. So they're definitely on here. Then we have a Sheriff's badge, and I personally don't use this too often on things like the Unkempt Herald because I feel like it's mainly a waste of ammo, but I know that a lot of people like to use this, so it's on here. Then we have both a Torque and a Hyperion relic because this build mainly features Torque and Hyperion weapons. And the Torque relic is one I use pretty frequently actually, so they're really great relics and I've put them on here. And then finally we have the Deputy's badge, which is really great for shotguns. Again, I'm not using this too often, but it can be pretty helpful. Alright, and now let's move on to the grenades on this build. So here we have a Slag Transfusion, which is just a really great grenade to slag enemies and to heal yourself with. And I'm using this pretty frequently on this build. Then we have a Slag Crossfire, which is mainly for bosses, because if you use this against just normal mobs, chances are high you will slag yourself. But for bosses this is a really great grenade. Then here we have some fastballs, obviously the strongest grenade in the game and just works brilliant on Axton even without a grenade build, so they're definitely on here with all kinds of elements, so no matter what kind of elemental relic you're using, you will always have one in your element. And then here we have a Quasar, and I'm switching this out with the transfusion quite a lot actually. The Quasar is just really great to pull enemies closer to you and just overall great. It also works like a Tesla grenade, so you can heal yourself with a Moxie weapon. Then the Stormfront, this is great for taking down shields from enemies and also to heal yourself with a Moxie weapon. Then a Leech here, and I think this grenade is pretty underrated actually. This is actually a pretty nice source of healing because you don't have to wait for transfusion trails. It just would be a lot better if this could come in Slag, but sadly it doesn't, so I've put a shock version on here so you'll be able to use it against almost all kinds of enemies. And then here we have a Chain Lightning. This is mainly just for healing yourself with the Grog Nozzle, but it can also stripe some enemy shields, so it's not that awful for general uses. Then a Magic Missile here. Two times actually, one in low level and one in high level. The high level one can actually damage enemies pretty well, but you can also kill yourself with this quite easily, so I've put a low level one on here. You can still slag yourself with this one, but it won't kill you. And then finally we have a slag singularity, and it's just kinda a mix between a slag grenade and a quasar. I prefer the quasar because I can heal myself with a moxie weapon, but this is also definitely not a bad grenade because it can also slag enemies. And finally, the shields on this build. Now the shields were pretty much the hardest part to decide on this build because I really wanted to make sure that the parts on every single shield are perfect. And this actually took quite a lot of time, but I'm satisfied with how they turned out now, so let's go over them. So here we have the blockade, which is just a great shield for overall uses, and the parts on this one are Pangolin, Hyperion, Hyperion, because I wanted to make sure to have a fairly high capacity and low recharge delay, and still have a decent recharge rate. This isn't actually that easy to achieve. Same goes for the antagonist. The parts on this one are Torg, Vladov, Vladov, and the antagonist is also just a really great shield. And this one probably took the longest time to find the perfect parts on, but the stats now should actually perform really nice. Then we have the Sham, which is just great for tanking a lot of bullets, and together with Quick Charge, this is actually really great for Axton. And then we have DB, and despite the fact that it's hated by a lot of people, this is actually one of Axton's best shields because he just has so many shield buffs for recharge delay that DB really shines on him, and he's pretty much the second best class in the game to use DB with. I also think it's not that unreasonable to use DB on some kind of enemies, like raid bosses. So it's on here and also with all kinds of elemental resistances. Then we have the black hole, which actually is pretty useful on this build because it fits well to Axton's playstyle of getting up close and personal to enemies, so its special effect can really help you. And the parts on this one are Dal, Bandit, Bandit, because I didn't really care for the Nova damage and radius too much because it's mainly for its singularity effect. And then finally we have some normal purple turtle shields here with all elemental resistances. And these are overall pretty nice shields, and they are really great if you're going to use moxie weapons like the slow hand or the hail, because it makes health gating a lot easier. And if you're going to use the slow hand, I would suggest using the right element. So if you're going to use a corrosive slow hand, you should also use a corrosive resistant turtle shield so that you won't put a dot onto yourself. Then the parts on these ones are Bandit, Dal, Maliwan, and also of course the Sham and the Bee both have the best parts for them. Alright, so now let's go over the items in the bank. So here's a non-elemental omen. Yes, this does actually exist in the game. But the bad thing about this is that only its splash damage will be explosive, and the main projectiles will deal non-elemental damage. So you can get some use out of this if you're going to spec into duty calls and then wear an explosive elemental relic. But I've put it in the safe because usually you want to use your shock omen if you want to use a omen just for general uses. Because the shock relic will boost both the splash damage and the main projectiles. Then here's the blockhead with a Jacob's grip in case you're going to use a Tedio relic. Here it is. And all of these relics are just different manufacturer relics. I've just put them in here in case you want to go for something special. So here's a huge variety of things you can choose from. Also another Hyperion relic with max accuracy, because this is actually quite nice, but I think most people will prefer reload speed over max accuracy. So yeah, that's pretty much my Soldier Axton build for you guys. There will be a download link in the description below, so you can try this build out for yourself. And if you have any kinds of questions, just feel free to ask me in the comments below, and I will make sure to answer every single one of them. And also, I apologize for the tons of cuts during this video. I just couldn't get it done to make a somewhat decent commentary there, so I apologize for that. But anyway, I leave some gameplay running now, and thank you guys for watching. See ya.
Take this! He's captured! Not dead yet! Autogun deployed! Grenade! Chew 'em up!